That's what we're chasing, really. Like we look at these things and we go, if I could just get a seat at the table or whatever you want to call it, really what we're saying is like anything I could do to go play behind that microphone or go play in that arena, it's almost like a kid-like thing. Like if I can go be a kid and again in this way, I'd do it.
This is the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, a podcast about Middle Tennessee business owners and professionals. Mostly.
So I got to ask, what is your definition of evil? Let's come out of the gate hard, man.
My personal definition of evil.
Yeah. Point that mic a little bit towards your mouth, a little bit. Like kind of point it towards you.
Okay, I got you. Like so.
There you go.
Perfect. My personal definition of evil. What a question. First one out of the gate. Yes.
We're kind of just discussing a little bit of faith topics here. So.
A well-thought or predetermined outcome that would cause a negative reflection of character.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I would say that. I would just say it's like, the opposite of...
the opposite of good.
Opposite of good, and it kind of makes sense that way because it's the yin and yang of the universe when you think about it. Yes, this is the mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast, where we talk to all sorts of people. I'm almost kind of thinking about rebranding it and calling it the Middle Tennessee Show. I'm playing around that notion because we talk to people from all points of Middle Tennessee, whether they're business owners or entrepreneurs or professionals. Typically, they all are at some level, right? And sometimes we talk about business, sometimes we don't. But in this case, our guest today, if you're in the Nashville music industry, if you're just in entertainment overall, you're kind of like you're a multi-threat, a lot of different things that you have going on. Mr. Rob Ricotta is joining us on the show today. Welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you. And I really do appreciate being here.
We hit it off on our buddy's podcast, Mr. Rich Redmond.
Mm-hmm.
That episode actually at the time of this recording will be coming out the same week. So we're going to try and space this out. You and I have a kinship and an alignment in the voiceover world and the drumming world.
Yes.
Definitely not the modeling world.
I wouldn't say that. Look at your hairline, sir. Let's take a moment.
I just, I got to drop about 50 pounds and I should be good, but we're working on it. It gets tougher when you get older. But you definitely have just a whole bunch of stuff going on. You're an actor, a voice actor.
Yes, sir.
You're a model. You've done photography and things like that.
Here and there. I always like to say that one lightly. Being 5'10".
Yeah.
It's always silly for people go like 5'10", you're not a model kind of thing. And I go, well, here and there, I'm not your runway model. I'm not your whatever, but I can, sell somebody some shoes or a hat or something. Right. So
a lot of things going on. You're also, you're playing with the rising star that is Mr. John Morgan.
Good buddy of mine, and honestly, somebody I count as a brother. It's weird to have that situation in music where you do have a personal relationship with the entity or the business or the brand that you're behind.
Yeah.
But that's always been cool. We used to play basketball against each other in high school.
Really?
So half our band are all just buddies from back home, which is special.
And back home is where again?
North Carolina, Western North Carolina. About as far Western North Carolina as you can go.
There's
Asheville, right. There's Asheville, and then you can go 45 minutes to an hour west, and there's a little town called Franklin, North Carolina.
Okay.
And that is where I'm from. A lot of people have been to Highlands, North Carolina, because it's a little getaway.
Yeah.
If you haven't, go there with your family.
Now, is that the North Carolina where you kind of after Asheville, you can either go south towards Chattanooga or continue taking 40 up to Knoxville?
It's that whole Blue Ridge Parkway area where you're legitimately our backyard of the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, where the Appalachian Mountains start is we're the first stop. So all those hikers that start the trail, they're like all happy, because we're the first stop. And it's hilarious because by the end of it, they're, people don't realize, but they take it for 6.5 months. So we're the beginning of it. And then wherever the end is in Maine, I'm sure that last stop is like the worst town ever because everyone's just like, oh my God, this has been awful,
exhausting.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Plus you're, up in the north and snow and
100%.
how many
100%.
Bears did you encounter? And all that
Yeah.
stuff.
How many weird people and bears did you encounter? Yeah.
And it's funny because when I met you, you're mid 30s, I guess, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I hear I've been doing voiceover all my life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not all my life, but since I was in radio in my early 20s. And it's always a voiceover artist's dream to get the gigs that you're getting. Because I'm looking at your resume and I'm like, dang, man, I need to pick his brain.
It's honestly, man, I don't take it as anything special by any means that I'm doing that anybody else isn't doing or whatever. And you actually just said something that sparked my interest, which was, you're like, I've been doing it my whole life. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Like wholeheartedly, the people who I've seen and I respect in this industry who do this, they have been doing it their whole lives. You ask their mothers if they're still alive, like, hey, did Jim do this? Yeah. Was he weird like this as a kid? And
totally.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So
I was a ham.
Exactly. You're a ham. You get in trouble in school for it. You never know if it's going to be something you use as a talent or not. But then at the same time, our mothers are probably the ones that went, yeah, they stood in the mirror and tried to do faces and accents when they were 5 years old. And
I was the kid. Over and over, I think it was like the bane of my parents' existence to go to parent-teacher conferences. And because they would constantly hear, doesn't pay attention, he daydreams, doesn't listen. It's constantly. And they weren't wrong,
You know what's weird about that, though, I would say is, and I don't know if this rings true for you or not, or you empathize with this, but because I had very much the same feedback. But what I really learned about that particularly is it's like, no, actually, Jim, somebody like Jim, somebody like Rob, they're actually listening to everything.
Yeah.
They're taking in the subconscious, the things that are outside of, the realm of exactly what's happening in a moment.
It just doesn't happen to be what's coming out of your mouth,
100%.
teacher. Yeah.
100%.
That's not really important to them right now, as much as you'd like to think it is.
And to go back to gigs that, you mentioned, and that's so sweet of you to say that. I think that one of the only reasons that some of those opportunities or things have come into life, or even relationships have been built, have been just out of listening. When I was in college, I was in an international school. And so listening to different accents and dialects, I almost couldn't escape it. Yeah. I mentioned to you when we first met, that's the one thing I can definably say, what has been so helpful through this process. It's been going oh man, having those people all the time. Yeah. If you're going to do an Italian thing for a sauce ad, what's better than to be around a bunch of Italians all the time, or French, or whatever it may be. So I feel really like that was valuable.
I was around people like that growing up. I mean, my New York, I can pull it out of
Oh, I hear it, brother.
My butt. But I had to tone it down in radio. And I think maybe I told you on the episode we did on Rich's show. But
I do, yeah, I remember.
Saturday, did I tell that story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, you were mentioning outside of recording with Rich, just how a lot of times the feedback sometimes from a client or people are lose some of that.
Yeah.
And you're also what? You want to lose the character behind something that I can intrinsically do? But yeah,
you get a lot of people reaching out to you to coach them in voiceover?
Man, not as many as you'd think with characters or stuff like that. It's actually more, I was actually telling you before this podcast, you said, hey, how'd your day go? Or whatever, what'd you do this morning?
Yeah.
It's more people just reaching out and going, can you make something read well? And it's not even from myself. I may not even. So a lot of copywriting, a lot of revisions, a lot of review of material that's been written. And then they even place it through a lot of AI or whatever you want to, or get an editor to do it, a copywriter. And then it's me just making it human, making it read well, and then read well for a female audience, a male audience, children, older people. So a lot of times what I get asked to do is revise a lot of the scripting that goes into commercial work.
So you're actually taking part in the copywriting.
That's really what I just have found over time, because they always end up, and I say the client always ends up deferring sometimes to the choices you or I make in a session, right? Yeah. And so a lot of times they're going Jim, you're the pro. You tell me how you would say this, or you make the choices that you would make. in the same way that hopefully we respectfully can do it in a session and say, hey, I know we just did it the way that you guys wrote it. Do you mind if I try something, right? You've heard those, or you've done that.
Yeah, little pickups.
Do you mind if I try something?
Yeah.
And typically what happens, that ends up being the take they take, is the one that you tried something in, or the one that you went, hey, like, I just noticed that I don't know, I geek out, and I'm sure you do. We've spoken about it even in film, but these actors are like, they'll have an interview and they'll be asked, this was the best scene of the last year. And they go, yeah, well, it was a choice I made in the moment. Yeah. And the director went, oh my God, that's the take. Yeah. That's what I want. It wasn't even scripted.
Yeah, you'd see that a lot in the Avengers, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, leading up to, the pinnacle, which was Endgame. All those movies leading up to it, especially in Civil War, they introduced Tom Holland's Spider-Man in that movie. And I guess at one point when Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is in his bedroom with Spider-Man and Peter Parker, if you will, Peter Parker misses his mark and was supposed to get up and make room for Tony to sit on the bed. And Tony, like Robert Downey Jr., literally goes over. He's like, you're going to move over now because I'm going to sit next to you. And they left it in. Oh. And it's like so great because it's such an awkward moment because Tom Holland forgot to move. That's a legitimate story. And it's like, you got to love the fact that they left it in, man.
100%.
Because that's so Tony Stark, you know what I mean?
When they embody the character like that, there's nothing better, I feel like, when you get to see that on camera and off.
Yeah.
And we were mentioning, I know the last podcast, not to keep on beating a dead horse, but we had such great content in that podcast that we got to speak about.
Yeah.
And one of the moments I remember best in that was literally looking at oh man, what was the film? We were like, I slipped my mind as of now. We can cut this part out, but
we could. I hardly ever edit, man. These are real conversations. We just kind of, it'll spark a memory later.
That's true. It'll come up again.
Sometimes they just kind of come back around. Getting into like even playing drums and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. You, I believe, a multi-instrumentalist at some point, or
ish. Out of purpose of like, I would say I'm a songwriter first, which is a weird thing, especially as a rhythm player.
Yeah.
But it is bowed to be real helpful in a room of being I'm sure you know that, of being a rhythm player, just adding that kind of into a writing session. But yeah, songwriter first. And then, like many moms out there, they had their kids learn piano.
Yeah.
And so thanks, Mom. Shout out to Mom, Nancy, for having me learn piano, because I think it was the first percussive instrument where I went, I don't like this percussive instrument, but I sure do love drums.
Yeah. Piano is a very good foundation, though, for a lot of music.
So true.
Yeah. I've always toyed around with it because my brother plays piano. Mm-hmm. We've always had a piano in the house. I was always envious of his ability to play, and he had that early purpose alignment with the piano since he was 5, 6, 7 years old. And it was just part of his identity, through those ages and the formative teenage years and things of that nature. For me, I went through several phases. I was into off-road vehicles and RC cars, and eventually got into drums and drumming when my parents finally capitulated and got me a kit. But I knew I wanted to play since I was 6, 7 years old. I saw MTV for the first time. And hey, do you want to play an instrument? Yeah, I want to play the drums. Well, okay. How about the saxophone? Okay. That's, I played the saxophone for maybe 4 months, and it just collected dust because it wasn't me, I wasn't really, I knew it then, even though I was 7, but I always just knew my identity was tied to being a drummer. And
that's funny.
To the point where I would set up encyclopedias on my brother's bed. He had all the cool music and like a basically veritable PA system in his room because he was constantly gigging and stuff. And I was yet to really kind of put my toe in the water with playing with other people, let alone playing drums. So I would set my drum set up with hardbound encyclopedias. And for some reason, he had a pair of wooden timpani mallets.
Oh, wow.
I used to beat the piss out of those things. I mean, I'm not sure.
All the things to use too.
Oh my gosh,
funny!
I'd play everything. He had Kansas, Rush, and all that stuff. And the first song I played on the drums was "Jump" by Van Halen.
Oh man, what a song to be your first.
Yeah.
Man, anybody who's I've learned over the years, male or female, who's super animated, like they have just something that they have the wiggles, if you will. A lot. I mean, I'm not going to say all of them. I can't give that percentage, but I mean, I would think you would, empathize with those same people. Like, yeah, drums was my instrument.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. And obviously you meet Rich Redmond and you're like, dude's got the wiggles, I empathize with that. So it's kind of funny. It doesn't surprise me at all that was something you were drawn to too. Cause like people who have that weird niche of like, I don't know, accents excite me or movies excite me or this or that. It's like, what's something that I can use? It's almost like somebody looking at WWE and looking at the physical sport it is and going, I want to do that. Right.
Yeah.
In the same way
me.
that, right. And that a drummer, like, a kid looks at a drummer and goes, what's the most physical exertion I could put out on stage where everything's moving? And you're like, drums, perfect. That's my instrument. You know
how many people in radio I met that are drummers?
That's there's got to be a study behind this.
It's weird because we're just naturally inclined to spin a lot of plates. Most of us.
Yeah. Makes sense. DJing and what you're doing. I mean, switching between cameras, editing.
Yeah.
The more too, I'm realizing that you may know this. I wasn't really aware in the last years, but when I was touring with Rich, he said, it's been a really weird thing, man, over the years. And I said, what? And he goes, when I've been doing these speaking engagements, he's like, I'll meet people who are CFOs or CEOs or let's say like wolves on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And for them to be multifaceted where they're like looking and trading stocks, bonds, whatever, they also need something to do that switches to their other part of their brain. He said, so I teach them how to do rudiments, paradiddles, flams, whatever, as they're in tandem with what they're doing to keep both sides of their brain occupied.
Huh.
And I was like, that is remarkable. He said, most of those people are real animated people, get highly functioning, a lot of capacity in their jobs. But they need something to then turn to that creatively gives that part of their brain a stimuli.
Yeah.
So here he is teaching them how to do this, which is, I don't know, was just pretty fascinating.
I could see that. It's because there is a lot of information coming at them.
Oh yeah.
And whenever you have, at least in my life, if I'm sitting there tapping or whatever, I mean, it drives my wife up a wall.
Yes.
But if I got a lot going on in my head, my leg is moving, I'm doing whatever on my hand and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know. It just helps me think,
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. I used to play a game on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's a video game, but it was kind of like Candy Crush. And whenever I'd be in meetings, I would tell people, I said, I'm really not trying to be rude. This actually helps me really focus on what's happening in the conversation. Oddly enough, like that little distraction opens up your mind to absorb all that extra information. It's just weird.
Makes sense, man.
Yeah.
Weirdly makes sense.
So in the business of drumming, what was the first iteration of you getting into, I guess, the entertainment business and being a professional?
Sure.
Like what were even some of the odd jobs you had as a teenager? What was your first job and stuff?
Yeah, no, to answer that question pretty directly, I would say a lot of drummers, funnily enough, have a weird start in like church life somehow.
Yeah.
And that came out of just purely like, I'm from a town of maybe 6,000 people at most. And so small little country churches and stuff. So there was an older drummer that was there. And that was back in the 90s where they still had congas and bongos in the church music.
And that was pushing it.
And that was pushing it. And you were totally. And so they allowed the kid that had, probably ADHD or whatever else, myself, get up on the, bongos and congas and kind of do his thing. So one day it was very, as it goes, he gets ill, falls ill. I get a phone call. Hey, Rob, can you fill in on the drum kit for this worship service or whatever it was? And I was like, I guess so, and that was maybe one of the first like parts of me that went, oh, okay, maybe I could do this kit thing because I was so unfamiliar to it. And that really legitimately, that was 14 years old.
Oh, wow.
And so after that, I had one guy who was a former drummer in our town, still looks like a rock star to this day. He has no hair. We always say he's bald as can be, but he was kind of always bald. But he was an old rock drummer, and he had done touring, and was a real estate agent in town. And he said, buddy, you're going to have a hard time starting a lot of garage bands in this town because there's just nobody here.
Yeah.
He goes, so, and maybe you'll have some throughout high school or middle school, and you guys will try your thing, or if you can. But he said, honestly, the best thing you could do, and he gave me a pair of headphones and legitimately like a Walkman, and he gave me Led Zeppelin records, and he gave me some other that's where I was introduced to Stuart Copeland and a lot of other great drummers or bands or whatever. And he goes, you can actually like put these headphones on and play with all these guys.
Yeah.
And it changed for me as like a 14-year-old kid. I was like, who had just kind of known the worship world of stuff, went, oh man, I guess I can play with all these guys, or like maybe get better doing that. I maybe can't learn all the practicalities, the rudiments, the things, because there was no drum line in my, high school.
Yeah.
But I can play with these records. And so, of course, a bunch of garage bands later, and a lot of, that's almost how I kind of met the guy that I play with now, John, is we were both doing kind of music in different portions of life. I'm a little older than him, in our small little town, and I met him in a studio. I just looked over one day, and the engineer was like, you need to hold back and listen to this guy.
Yeah.
And sure enough, like he was singing this song and in the studio, and I said, man, who wrote that song? He said, I wrote that song. And it was kind of like, your typical, like, no way, you wrote that song alone. And the rest was history in a lot of ways. Like I moved here first, and within 6 months to a year, he had moved here. And that was, that's a little bit of the musical journey. But I'd moved overseas for school. As soon as I turned 19, I knew I wanted to do music more professionally. And so the first professional experience was overseas playing in a band. And then it was, really realizing the Nashville culture is elsewhere too. You have Austin, and at that time overseas in Australia, you had these bands that were looking for multi-instrumentalists to play drums or keys or sing or whatever. And so I ended up in a lot of weird bands. So it was fun.
I would imagine that, did it teach you anything about like business acumen, sales, selling, anything like that?
Absolutely. Selling yourself. I mean, when I say I don't know, over time, this, Jim, but like the branding, your personal branding, it's like we realize, right? Like we walk out and we could throw a stone in any direction, and there's going to be 10, 15 of the best drummers in the whole world here, right? And to know like what you bring to a band, or to know what you bring to the studio elsewhere, whatever, is such an intrinsic part of also like the value that you sell, right? So like, what do you bring to a band? Like the hang, the cleanliness, the order, the whatever have you. It's far beyond your physical capability as a drummer, right?
It's the attitude over aptitude, which is kind of a hiring tenet in business. A lot of people would rather, the smart ones at least, who want to build culture, will hire for attitude over aptitude. Oh my goodness. If I got somebody who's got a great attitude, I could teach them all day.
Willing to learn, yeah.
And they're completely humble. I mean, I just did a gig recently, and I went into it, even though I have 30 some odd years of playing experience in drumming. And I found I've rekindled the joy of playing again, which I'm happy about.
Yeah.
Because it was gone for probably 2 decades. Didn't even want to pick up sticks and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe because I was just distracted with radio and doing all the other things, and went into the car business for a season. But, recently, I think it was with a visit to the Music City Drum Show, which is coming up in July. At one of the, are you going to be there? You can
I haven't been the last 2 years, and that was been purely out of we're gigging somewhere, which sucks. But
well, Rich and I are going to have a booth there.
I hope to be there.
Yeah.
If
you can swing on by. I went to one of those shows by suggestion of a friend of mine, and I think he and I went, and he's a big drummer as well, and he and I do a podcast together called the Ales and Tales Podcast, alesandtalespodcast.com, if you like beer reviews. And all of a sudden I felt like that, like I'm kind of into this again. And then Rich was nice enough to give me one of his kits, and I put that together, put some cymbals, and I started playing again, just for fun.
That's a good friend, man.
Yeah,
Just like,
and it's not like I could afford my own stuff, but he's like, I'll just give you one.
that's a Rich Redmond move right there, as far as like, wait, you're passionate about music again? Here, take this.
Yeah, which is great. He made it. We wanted to get it recovered and to a color that I like and everything. So great, such a great guy, big heart. It was like therapy for me.
It is.
Because at this point in life, for a minute there, it was always Marvel, and I like talking about Marvel and all the different movies. Never a big comic book guy growing up, but it brought me joy.
Yeah.
And it's like, in my mid 40s when I started getting into it, I was like, go with what gives you joy. Just run towards it.
Is that not true?
And because there's so many things with, supporting a family and out there hustling, spinning all the plates, it can really drag you down. You got to have a way
mental
to
health,
steam.
man, isn't it? It drumming is a mental health thing. It's also that weird physical exertion we all can relate with.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost, it's taking that sledgehammer and going to the ruckus room that they, you pay, you've seen those rooms, right?
The rage room,
yeah. Right? Where you pay to mess up a car or something, get all this whatever out. Man, is it that sometimes?
Yeah.
Like drumming. I mean, you as a parent, you as a husband, all those kind of things. I know for me, it is a mental health thing, but it's also that physical exertion thing where it's like, if I haven't worked out or something, that's my workout.
Yeah.
For you too.
It's funny because now that with the advent of the Apple Watch, I'll be sitting there playing. It'll be like, hey, are you exercising?
That's right. Like, you burnt 1,000 calories.
Sure. It's like, is this an indoor walk? Sure. Let's count it as an indoor walk. And I would hit yes while I'm playing. And this is kind of curious. I'm like, we gauged you walked 1.75 miles.
Exactly.
And I'm like, it is burning calories and you're sweating and having a good time. And, as I was preparing for this gig that we had, I was running through the show and just building up the endurance to do a 90-minute show was in and of itself, not Herculean, but it was a challenge. Cause you're sitting there getting tired and stuff and all of a sudden your muscles, I'm like,
yeah, man, it's a marathon.
It used to not be like this.
100%. Yeah. Anybody who does it now too, not just the aging process for us, but it's going from 0 to 100, right? You're going from, I haven't done this in a minute to, as you said, a 90-minute show. And you're going, oh man, I just got into a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like, this thing's fast. And I've got all my muscles have to remember how to do this,
A lot of it was also going to see bands and getting really tired of just seeing people up on stage, maybe in a bar or something like that they were phoning it in.
Yep.
And my brother and he had a huge influence on my life of, I went through my Alex Van Halen, then Neil Peart phase. And of course my playing level, once I discovered Neil, it went up to a whole different echelon. And everything, like I would play different songs, whatever came on the radio. It was just like a little bit of a gauntlet. Hey, can I play to Steve Miller? Whatever came on the radio, I would just try and play.
Absolutely.
Until I just memorized it. But of course, when I would get into other bands, one of them being a cover band with my brother, probably back in our 20s still, I would always I understand how that drummer played it, but Neil would play it like this, so I'd put like Neil Peart-esque fills into like Kansas songs.
It's awesome.
It would drive my brother nuts. He's like, dude, I get it. You want to show off and you want to do your thing, but you got to play what people know. You got to honor the song. There's a reason why the song is played that way and people resonated with it and it made a hit song. It's like to the point where I completely understood what he's saying as you mature as an adult and a musician. So you see people that, they'll phone in, like even he's in a tribute band and some of the guys in his band will, don't stop believing. Play it the right freaking way. There's a way to play
true,
it. Steve Smith specifically wrote that song a very particular way.
Yeah.
And it works. Because, you listen to that song, there's a lot going on, but a lot of drummers like, he's kind of hitting the bell, the ride cymbal, and the toms, but, I'll just milk it. No. There's a specific pattern. Do it right.
Yeah. It's like, don't don't screw with people's memory,
Right?
Because it made them feel a certain way.
Yeah.
You know, a buddy of mine works at the Musicians Hall of Fame in town.
Right.
And he introduced me to all that as far as he's like, oh, have you been to Municipal? I said, yeah, but he's like, have you ever been, you know, at this part? And so I was telling you guys last we were together, that just rocked my world to just see those session musicians make decisions that forever are etched in the stone of what the artist wanted or what in the moment, what it was and what it is. And I totally, you know, am in that world with you where it's like, that was etched that way for a reason.
Yeah.
So we should probably do it the way that they wrote it. You know?
Right. And it's, and then they see, like, getting back to what I was initially saying is my brother would also say, he's like, dude, you're the drummer. You need to kick the ass of the band and drive that band.
Heartbeat. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's how many times have I, even the band I filled in for recently, when I first saw them, I, as a drummer in the audience, I'm getting frustrated. Dude, kick their ass. Come on. Kick the ass. Let's go. You know, lead these guys. And it's almost like, oh, it's so frustrating to watch. I don't know if you kind of get that.
Oh, I do.
You see sometimes on Broadway with these guys, they're just phoning it in. And I get it. It's shift after shift and it's a long day and you're trying to make a living.
Yeah.
But guys, you're there to entertain.
Yeah, no, to do it justice like that is such a responsibility, especially as a drummer. Yeah. That signature thing that someone put on something is so important. I was going to actually ask you in this, and I said save this for you, but when it comes to like, because we level on the same way of drumming, of voiceover, of acting in those ways, and have a deep love for film as well. What is it for you personally that you've said, even maybe we'll say prior to, but even now, and you go, I want to do, that's what I want to do. Right. Maybe it's the visual. So it could be easily, sometimes I'm asking for a specific reason, not for a certain answer, but a specific reason. But, you know, it could be anything. You look at and you go, that's what I want to do, or that's the level I want to do it at.
Right.
What would that be?
What's the thing?
You? Yeah, what would it be?
Well, as I'm approaching my 50s, the thing is, like, you know, I was telling my wife about this last night, and she's always kind of known. I'm like, I want to get the RV and see the country, man, and have a kit in the basement, so to speak, to play in whatever band I'm in, and just meet up with them wherever we're going to be, kind of thing, and just have the freedom to be nomads. And she was like, yeah, I completely don't want to do that. I'm like, all right, well, we got to figure something out. But, you know,
is there compromise in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just to be, you know, I've always wanted to do a little bit more nationally based voiceover work. And I guess because I got so many other things going on, to pursue that and get in the minds of some of these people that make those decisions. I know I could do the work. I have enough under my, years and skill under my belt to do it. It's just a matter of getting, in front of the people who make those decisions. I haven't done a very good job over the years of promoting myself. I didn't believe in my voice. I would have taken it a lot more seriously if I could go back in time and smack myself around. No, dude, you can do this. It was a lot of that. But to answer your question, honestly, never really wanted to play. If I played in a touring band, cool. But I think ultimately I'd want everything to be on my terms. So
I hear you on that. Yeah. Even just being able to have the freedom to do like you did with your brother, where you're playing in a band you want to play in.
If these guys call me back, they want me to play again, I'd do it. It's not going to be, it's going to be a renegotiation of sorts. But at the same time, I've done it.
Right.
I've kind of checked a box on the bucket list. The next thing I would want to do, I've always wanted to play, I'd like to play in a Bon Jovi tribute band. I think that would be fun. It's good music.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But all the different music that I really want to play as a drummer, I think can be combined into a theme band. And my brother and I'd really like to play with him.
See, that's a cool goal to have now, to go, let's take all these anthems and make a themed, that would be cool. Yeah. Absolutely.
And there's enough content, enough good songs out there to resonate with a wide audience. There's, dare I say, Journey tribute bands are pretty much a dime a dozen now. The good ones are the ones that stand out. My brothers in particular They use no tracks, no backing tracks. Everything is live.
Which is saying something, man.
Right. So they train their vocals to do all the vocals you're hearing are live.
My gosh, man.
And it's, in this experience we've had with this other band, it was, there were backing tracks and stuff like that, but, not that they really need it. It was a very talented band, but it was one of those things I'm like, okay, I can do that, but to do it on that level where, even bringing singing into it as a fifth limb, oh, buddy, that's a whole different element.
The only reason I ask those questions are obviously we are almost obsessed as humans, I feel like, with this age thing. And my wife's grandmother passed away not too long ago. She was 106.
Oh, wow.
My grandmother, who's still here, is 97. And if there's some wisdom behind getting around people like that, my grandmother gave me this really amazing song once, and she said, "This is my favorite song." And I was like, okay, cool. And I'm thinking it's going to be something for the last at least maybe 25 years or something. It ends up being something much older than that. It's a song called "When I Grow Too Old to Dream." And my memories will remind me, essentially, is the kind of hook of the song. But what she's really mentioning about it is that she's mentioned to me where you're currently at, some of those dreams that you and I have. Like, one for me has always been the current year I'm in. I said when I was 25, by 35, I like to be working for Pixar. And I had a buddy of mine, I mentioned in the last podcast, that when we were together, that we kind of made a pact together. I said, I'll buy you a steak dinner, whoever makes it first, to whatever dream they wanted. Well, his was, I want to be a character developer. He was a artist, sorry.
Yeah.
I want to do the pre-production for either Warner Brothers or Pixar. Well, what does he do? He moves and he ends up working for both. He worked for Pixar for a time. Now he works for Warner Brothers. And so the beautiful thing about that is that we have these things. And for me personally, I would still go, I look at these, I geek out on, in the same way with Marvel that you do, I geek out on looking at these character actors molding these characters behind the booth, right? Or behind the microphone in the booth. And I'm going, that's what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
And I realize in the same way with music, it's not there's a few venues I think both of us could go, I'd love to play right, that we haven't played yet. But what does it really come down to? I'd like to be in a band, or I'd like it to look like this. All that to encapsulate what I'm saying, is that we look at those things and we go, for some reason, we put timestamps on them. Like I feel like with voiceover specifically and acting, we have this opportunity to go like, dream's not dead yet.
Yeah.
In a weird way. I think it's one of the only professions where you and I can do this. You see the voice actors, the actors that act, and they're like, oh, well, okay, yeah, Morgan Freeman and so is 80 some years old, or they're in their 90s, or they're still doing this, and they're and it's one of those things where I look at now and I go, there's really no timestamp specifically on something that you pay to play.
Right.
That's what we're chasing, really. Like, we look at these things and we go, if I could just get a seat at the table, or whatever you want to call it, really what we're saying is like, anything I could do to go play behind that microphone or go play in that arena, it's almost like a kid-like thing. Like, if I can go be a kid again in this way, I'd do it.
Does your garage door sound like this? If it does, it's screaming for help. Call Incredible Doors, 931-348-DOOR. We're making garage doors in Murray and Williamson counties work better and sound better. We just make them incredible again. Go to IncredibleDoors.com or call 931-348-DOOR. Follow us on Facebook for specials on maintenance visits, keypads, and other items. 931-348-DOOR. IncredibleDoors.com.
But yeah, I asked you specifically because I always think it's interesting to hear from like new friends, if you will, but like dear friends, where we're speaking about things, and I'm like, I know it's silly to hear sometimes, don't give up on your dreams, or don't give up on this because you don't have to but in these arenas of entertainment, you see people have the accolades of their life, pretty much the last fourth of their life.
Yeah.
Whether it be music, or you look at the records that came out when somebody was whatever, or like you see the ad somebody did and it's like, oh my God, that guy's, 77 years old. He's still doing it. Or a movie comes out and you're like, that's the best performance he's had in 25 years.
Yeah.
And he's 60, whatever. So I don't know if you resonate with that.
Oh, I totally do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never been one to really, when you get up to where I am in age, you start thinking about mortality and, how much time is left. And
I think about that now, but yeah.
That we passed, everybody, and this is going to sound completely macabre. We pass the anniversary of our death every year.
Mm-hmm.
Something to think about. My wife was a home health aide for hospice when she was in her late teens, early 20s. And so that kind of resonates in her mind as well, where, this weekend we're going to a wedding and, hey, you want to get a hotel room downtown? It's not the most inexpensive thing to do. But I remember, and I said this last night, when we used to stress out about, well, should we spend a couple $100? We really don't have it. Every time we went ahead and did it, we had a great experience and the money just took care of itself. It never really put us, at odds. It was semi-irresponsible, not completely and utterly irresponsible.
But you lived. Yeah.
Right. We're doing the same thing that this week. Do we have the money to really do this? It's not the smartest move at this point, but I'm like, you know what? It hasn't bitten us yet.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just do it, and make a night out of it and have fun and have a place. We're not going to have to drive. We can walk to the venue and stuff like that. So let's just do that and I remember immediately the scarcity mindset was gone. It was all about opportunity and a bountiful mindset. Money will come and go. I've learned that in the last 10 years, especially being in the car business, is that you really have no control of, what kind of happens around you beyond your physical ability to react to things and stuff like that. So I have a much different viewpoint and much better confidence, because I think confidence is a memory of success. And I wasn't, coming out of high school, not doing so well in college and dropping out, having the mantra hung over your head that if you don't go to college, you're going to be a loser in life. You're not going to win. Mm-hmm. All that was living in my mind and told to me from a very young age. So it took some time to say, no, that's not true. And then live my life according to, no, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. I tell my kids this, okay? You don't need to go to college. If you want to go to college, make sure it's paid for.
Yes.
Like you're not going into debt for it. If it doesn't work out, no big deal. You'll figure it out.
Absolutely.
I want you to hear that. Even though if you get into your 20s, you'll figure it out. Okay, if you get to 25, 26, 27, you should probably, push down on the gas pedal a little bit more and figure things out sooner. But if you're in your early 20s, it's okay you're still figuring it out.
100%. Yeah.
I was able to have that identity and purpose that came out of me. I knew about the drums, when radio became a reality for me, the same kind of feeling came over me for radio that I had about the drums. This is me. This is me.
Purpose, yeah.
And I knew I was getting into a business that was kind of on the decline. It didn't pay very well, but man, was it fun.
Yeah.
It was a blast.
Exactly.
And I found ways to supplement my income through learning about opening up a side hustle and LLCs and S-Corps and stuff like that, learning about business, getting into the car business, getting out of radio. When I'm like, okay, I've gotten that out of my system.
Yep.
I still kept on doing voiceover, still had my toe in the water for production and stuff like that on some level. I could do video editing and, I always had those skills. Getting out of radio, I always felt, my skills are kind of irrelevant now. Let me go provide for my family in a much better way by selling cars. And I worked for a friend of mine who was a GM at a Honda dealership, learned about the business, did okay. Got into a brand, Mercedes, for a time, and I really learned that brand and fell in love with the brand. Never thought I'd be a German, luxury automobile guy. I think Mercedes is a freaking cat's meow. It's a great brand. Never thought I'd ever own a Mercedes, and we do now. It's all these little things that that business just really turned my confidence right side up.
Yeah.
And, I learned about, posturing, how to deal with people, how to talk to them, how to sell, how to close, how to second sell, how to, set things up, tee things up for other people. All that stuff that's so necessary in business.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I take it with me now.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that background, even then, the past couple of years have been a little tight money-wise because the economy kind of went through a little bit of a weird phase. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, would have crushed me. But now you got a couple of laps around the block of life. You just kind of look at it and go, man, we're just going through a valley. That only means a ascent to a mountaintop's right around the corner.
So true.
Just don't walk along the valley floor.
So true.
You know what I mean? So I guess to answer your question, I don't see it as age. I see it as wisdom. And I have a notion of you go from your have to years to you get to years. I know a lot of people in their get to years, a lot of people I work with in the podcasting world that are just, hey, we're going to play golf today. Maybe I'll write a song. Maybe, what's that like? You don't have to be doing this podcast, but it's fun. Find the joy in it, so on and so forth. I don't envy them in a way because they have to scrounge to find purpose.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's the best way to put it, man.
So that's what I think a lot of actors that achieve tremendous success. That's why they get on soapboxes. That's why they start, I'm important. I have influence. So you'll listen to what I have to say and adjust your life accordingly to how I believe you need to live and stuff like that. That's purpose for them because all of a sudden, my basic needs are more than taken care of. Way more than taken care of. I got a roof over, I've got several roofs. You know what I mean? I've got all the cars I need. I can go out and buy a Maserati or whatever tomorrow and not bat an eye. But what's getting you up in the morning?
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's one of those things that, I really don't have huge goals. If I get an opportunity to play in an arena and stuff like that, go.
Yeah.
My brother, he wants to do that. And I'm like, well,
cool.
dude, you got to move here, man.
Yeah.
You'll find a gig.
Well, he's playing, the funny part too, is it's got to be such a dichotomy because he's playing arena type songs out of an arena, that's got to be like holding back on, especially on keys, thinking, oh, what would this sound like? In the arena rock format.
And I think, he's like, hey, it's like me playing in a tribute band that I wanted to play in. I'm done. If I do it again, great. I know the show. It's fun. I had a blast. I'll bring it every single time and they'll have me. I don't need to do it again. I got it out of my system.
You find joy in it, which is so cool to hear that over and over again. Like where you're just like, man, if there's anything, I'm good to like the guys who and girls who really enjoy it are the take it or leave it people.
Yeah.
I feel like that can look like, I don't know, to look at the stage, to look at the opportunity to play, to look at being in a band and go, I find joy in this, like irregardless of where or what I'm playing.
Yeah.
If I get the opportunity to do it, it's such a joyful moment. And, that's a pleasant person to be around, because they're not chasing something.
I know, like confidently, I know that if I could get into just a cover band playing a couple of gigs a month in a bar or whatever, I confidently can say that audience will be entertained. And they'll see me having fun.
Yeah.
Because I know as an audience member how important that is. Because I used to be the curmudgeon that, if we were playing to 6 people in a bar and we're playing Enter Sandman for the 800th time. Yeah, it's like, this is a dirge. And it would look like it. And that energy is transferred. If 100%. You're not having fun, they're not going to have fun.
Oh, no way. Yeah.
So, that's one of the things that even though, with these guys that have played this music over and over and over and over again, and I know I was the fresh one, I wanted to make sure. I even looked at the first gigs videos at the City Winery. I'm like, I look like I'm bored, but a lot of it was nerves and anxiety and stuff like that. But I'm like, I need to smile more. And I was taking notes.
Yeah.
And, this next gig, I knew the show. We had already had the run through of it. I know what's
You're
coming.
Enjoying it.
Now I'm just going to be smiling, making eye contact with people, making sure that they know I'm having fun. Some of these other guys didn't look like they were having fun.
That's it, man.
You know,
it means the world, doesn't it?
It does.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, as far as the business sense and getting into that with musicianship, my brother being, he came down here for the gig and also the beginning of May. And we did the Broadway thing for his first time. And he goes, it is a lot of talent, but do they believe and understand and how to posture and negotiate to get paid well? I said, well, funny thing you mentioned that is that the Broadway players, that's like a highly coveted thing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because those guys can make money. He's like, yeah, but to walk around with a bucket and beg for money, I go, yeah, that's what you got to do. That's how they get paid. He's like, because we discussed different things about musician pay around town. He goes, these guys need to negotiate better. I said, yeah. And a lot of that comes down to selling skills and business acumen and understanding how to posture.
No doubt.
I mean, is it one of those things that's been a challenge for you at all? Or
Yeah, I think that there's always the part of it too that I believe in any organization. And this, for me, it's a different situation because I didn't start on Broadway. And I have obviously a lot of friends here who have. And the dream actually for them is to come and play Broadway. And there's a lot of guys and girls who play, who treat it, I think, like all of us do when you first move here as a business model, in the sense of, you are hired onto this organization or you're a part of this organization and you're building something from the groundwork up.
Yeah.
So I think, to your point, we all have this garage band mentality that if we continue to consistently give and bring the value we bring and that grows with the company, then that'll be at some point, whether on Broadway or elsewhere, be something where we grow together in. I think that for myself, I've always looked at results. I'm a results-driven guy. So the song in people's mouths that finally has taken after so many years of working, where you're like, wow, the whole place is singing this song finally that we've been playing the last 4.5 years. They wouldn't know we've been playing it the last 4.5 years, but now it's starting to come into the lips, and that's awesome. One of the first times to answer that question, like very viscerally, we were in Wyoming a couple weeks ago at a $1 million cowboy bar there, just in Jackson Hole. And, to our joyful surprise, that night we were playing, we had headlined it, and it was just a beautiful example of, over the years, work, right? John and I have been touring. This will be 6 years together. The rest of the guys would be 5 years together. And finding out later, after we had done the gig, that it was one of those where we couldn't kind of see what was going on necessarily behind the lights, but you were like, there's quite a few people here. And it was a wonderful thing to be able to come there and say, oh, we sold it out. There's that beautiful thing that comes with, I don't even want to call it gratification, but you start to go, okay, what comes with this as a business is when we sell out places, when all this work that's put in, that definitely means at some point in booking or whatever else, they're going to go, well, they were at this dollar amount. Now they're at this dollar amount.
Right.
So we're in I can't answer that other than we're in the middle stages of that, where it's like the tier where incremental steps finally mean something over all these years, Yeah. Where you're walking up to this next tier, but you're kind of grasping for it. You're finally realizing, okay, there's now a monetary value being placed on your entity as a band. But I totally understand what you mean by, we have, as musicians, as writers, even
creatives,
songwriters, we have a scarcity mindset in a lot of ways, which is a survival mode, and it's to our detriment in many ways.
Well, you're forced to, you're coming to town, you have to make a living.
Right.
You're doing all the other things to make ends meet, which is the case that I make to my brother. I'm like, look, if you move here, you're not like a typical person moving here. You've already got an established career as a great attorney. You could certainly set up shop here or continue doing remote work, and your bills are paid, dude. This is, you going out and hugging, shaking hands and kissing babies is a luxury. That's a hobby. That's fun. That's doing it on your terms. All you have to do is make the connections, show that you're a good hang. I'm like, dude, you could do your job on a damn tour bus.
For sure.
You could, as long as you kind of achieve and live that moment that you want.
A lot of people do.
Right.
Lovely people do. Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think how many people in the music industry have such immense careers. I have a friend who's a mental health therapist, and She continues to be just this absolute hustler, both as a drummer and a mental health therapist. And it's like, somehow she's found this amazing, I've said, you're the only one I know who's found this balance in life that we're all trying to figure out, which is like, how do I balance that passion with my other passions?
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see over the years how her career has actually, one hand has fed the other.
Well, you found a congruency with all the things like under the entertainment umbrella. You've been able to make hay with it. You know, being with John I don't know you've been with him for 6 years, but a lot of the the voiceover stuff, I know that stuff pays well. You know, especially the voiceover stuff. I would imagine it's probably the lion's share of your income. I don't know how much modeling pays and stuff like that, but I would imagine those things, they're licensed photos. And the other element we're dealing with these days is the AI factor.
Mm-hmm.
In the songwriting sense, it's, you can have AI write a song. What is that going to mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is it the Walmartization of the business happening? It's already happened with streaming.
Totally.
It's getting so much more difficult to eke out a living, just songwriting, making money on a song. You got to go out and just play live. And now you have artists out there that are playing live. Like my kids listen to these artists.
Mm-hmm.
Went out to a gig in Atlanta to see his favorite artist, my son. It was the equivalent of a karaoke show. He was singing to tracks, and the dude packed the house.
Oh my goodness! Yeah.
No band, just tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Him just singing over. It's like,
it's changed.
This is what passes for you guys who are entertained. Okay.
So somebody who lives like you, because I can see this about you, even though we're newer friends, you've done a lot of adapting, or like then choosing dying, as over the times where they just say, hey man, over the ages, you got to adapt or you're going to be done in this business.
Yeah.
Where do you believe now we're at? Because you continue to do that, even just from a video standpoint, audio standpoint. You always, you're someone who has the most current way of doing things, whether it be software or cameras or, audio equipment.
Yeah.
So someone who keeps up with the times like yourself and looking to the future, because I totally am there with you, where it's like, I even have to, I'm sure you've seen them too. You have to look at a contract, especially for reading a book. And it's like, we can take in perpetuity any which way we take these readings. We can sell them again, however we'd like.
Yeah.
We can take your voice and analyze it through AI and use it as a tone to drop here as a plug-in or whatever. And we have to watch those things because those are coming if they're not already here. So where do you feel like, just as an interesting question, I would love to hear from you. What is the adapt or die now? Like in our industry. So when we're talking about, which I think you're answering that in one way or another by saying, look, as musicians, as a songwriter, like you've got to look out for yourself and for those that are around you from a business mindset, other than a scarcity mindset. Now, what does it look like, would you say, for what we do, voice acting? Where's the adapt now, in your opinion?
I would say what I've been telling a lot of students, I teach a lot of people that want to get, I always hear, well, I've always been told you have a good voice.
You do.
I get
Yes.
that.
This is true.
You do have a good voice, but that is 10% of it. But anyway, I always tell them, look, you're up against some tremendous odds. Can you make a living out of doing this? You'll probably make some good side hustle money for a season or two. But if you learn how to produce yourself, that's a game changer. If you learn, getting in the ear, and this is you're getting into the voiceover aspect of things. You're learning how to voice stuff, but then developing an ear as to what sounds good, how to, balance your voice out and EQ it in context with a music bed, things of that nature. I said, that's my skill set. That's what I was able to develop over the many, almost 2 decades in radio, was bringing that skill set to I produced all my own demos.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
Until recently I hired Chuck Duran, because honestly, I wanted to go about it. I guess to partially answer your question, I wanted to find a voiceover coach that could actually coach me, because I've hired a few that I'm like,
I know what you know. Yeah.
Or something. You're not telling me anything new.
Right. And not out of pretentious.
Right.
Yeah. Just, oh, okay.
They literally go, you're not, I don't know what I can do.
Right.
Here, you know what I mean? And I appreciate that. But Chuck was the first one to really dive deep and, spent some time for the amount of money I paid him. I mean, like, dude, I need to pay you more. But I maybe I was a challenge for him, but I'll go back to him again.
Yeah. I felt that way about, there's a guy named Joe Loesch. And
Joe Loesch.
Yeah. Well,
great guy.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And helped me so much when I first moved here. Mm-hmm. Even just from an acting voiceover perspective, but just with somebody, it was as simple as like, all right, Joe, what do I need to do? He's like, well, for starters, look at your website, and like, you're looking at it and he like tears it apart and you're like, thank you. Because no one else would tell me that. You know what I mean? It's had so much little to do sometimes with how you're going about something as far as your craft, and it has so much more about the business aspect. He's like, I'm just going to come at this from this perspective. Yeah. Have you ever been told this? And you're like, thank God for somebody like you,
He himself being in position as well.
Yep. Isn't that, it's crazy, man.
He's a great guy.
He is. He's a good dude. There's some great, female and male actresses in town too, that I feel like outside of like a hub like Atlanta, Chicago, New York, LA, are just such wealths of like knowledge and wisdom here in town, because they've chosen to stay in a place that film has not caught up yet here, or we just don't have the studios that are to code or all the things that would make this more of a film studios. But when it comes to voice acting and acting, are just like, they're powerhouses. They're like freaking A-listers, It's so amazing to be around those people too, just learn from them.
But as far as asking your question before, what's the pivot now? I think it always comes back to understanding negotiations and posturing. How can you accurately and strategically posture your value to somebody? Mm-hmm. Even as somebody, a brand new musician coming into town, I get it. I'm nobody. I'm one of a huge pool of immense talent that, you could replace me at the drop of a hat. Mm-hmm. One of the things I learned from Rich is that he was an expert at putting and whether he knows it or not, at putting his value proposition out. Hey, I'm overly trained. I've got all these things. I have a tuxedo. I can, read music and understand
any genre. Yeah.
Like any genre you want.
Incredible.
I was in the 1 o'clock lab band. I mean, I did all these things. You get a call like that. It's like, okay, this guy's a player.
Yeah.
Let's give him a shot.
Confident. Yeah.
Overall, he would always say that, I never got a gig off an audition. It was always off of a referral. Somebody, championing you. There's that too.
Totally.
But I think a lot of people coming into it in the creative space, creatives just aren't natural business people. Mm-mm. Even with this situation we had playing out with a band, understanding after how long they've been playing, and this is where something I learned in the car business, where you green, you grow, and you ripe, you rot. And I believe it was maybe Ray Kroc that said it the first time. So one of those guys. Can't remember who I'm attributing it to, but I heard it first time in the car business, and it's so true that even when we got past all these different things that we talked about, I said, well, how do we get you guys to the point where you're making enough to accommodate these amazing players, maybe even have a road crew, maybe have, hotels and stuff like that on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
And I said, I have so many ideas, and I literally heard over the phone in the background, yeah, we've heard them all. Okay. How's that working out for you?
Yeah, sure.
Because I see like what you're doing online and stuff like that. And it's one of those things you come away with, you could be doing this, you could be doing that, you could, all the different things. Mm-hmm. How are you posturing this? Mm-hmm. Well, it's just that the clubs tell us, right, somebody's selling to you. Mm-hmm. Somebody's doing the selling and somebody's being sold. You'll need to learn how to reframe those conversations. That's a talent. That's a skill that's not taught enough.
Yeah, you're not wrong, man.
So
it's a great answer.
No.
I still am answering it on a consistent basis, especially as firstly a voice actor. I'm like, man, what, how can I answer this for myself? And then when somebody does ask, not just an opinionated, give an opinionated answer, it's like, give something that has some meat to it to the rest of the people asking. A lot of it I know right now is, I hate to say it, but with being a technology generation, keep up with the tech. Sure, producing yourself and stuff like that, but thinking of what we have right now, not just as stealing from what we do more as an asset and a tool to what we already do.
Yeah.
Just in the sense of like, I know I think of a lot of like, oh, outside of, you know, an animation studio, how would I ever begin to voice characters in that space? Well, it's like now we can pretty much create on our own those kind of opportunities.
Yeah.
Acting as producers in a sense, you know, I feel like the best times in my life now that feel like they are progressive, meaning moving with, adapting with the times and change, are now almost, I don't know if you resonate with this, but acting is almost like a producer, holistically going like what you're essentially doing now, where you're like, here's another voice actor who we have I guess you would say off the cuff, the same structure of voice that would be placed in the same category.
Yeah.
That, you know, and we're partnering to do something has strength to it, right? I feel like now what's been very helpful is getting around like younger voice actors or older voice actors and creating something from scratch that looks like, from a producing perspective, writing something, executing something.
Right.
So,
right.
for what it's worth, that seems like a more future-based decision than looking out for just me.
And it's, again, looking at what technological shifts that are happening. I mean, it happened 25 years ago with the Napster dilemma. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Napster started everything that we know now as streaming, where they went to $1 a song, and Steve Jobs kind of solved that problem. But I remember sitting in a studio in Vegas wondering what the solution to all this was, because everybody was up in arms about it.
Yeah.
And the whole music industry was like, holy crap.
What now? Yeah.
You know, how do we keep CDs and records being sold and stuff like that? And I remember just racking I'm like, what's the solution to this?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the iPod came out, and it was $1 a song. You could pick the songs you liked. I'm like, well, you know, that's going to affect a few things, because nobody's buying, you know, $14, $15 albums anymore on CD.
We're not carrying around.
Right. You know, the culture kind of got away from falling in love with reading the jacket and the liner notes and all that stuff, and the lyrics, and finding out who did what and who produced and who played on this, that, and the other thing. That was a thing we used to do.
Totally.
You know, that was, we would always, I remember sitting in my bed just listening to an album. You know, a fresh album would come out, you'd open up the liner notes and follow along as you listen to the entire thing. It was an experience. That doesn't happen anymore.
No, you're right, man.
You know, so, but you can't, technology is a freight train that's going to come down the tracks, and you're just going to be hit if you're standing on them. It's coming whether or not you like it.
Do you feel like we should be teaching that to, say, my generation and onwards, that whole thing of like, you know, a lot of people just said we called it burning records, because, you know, you'd sit on your bed, like you said, and you'd be burning through records. Like, is that something that you feel is too far gone?
I don't know. I don't know if the generation now is into that. It's very immediate gratification generation.
Feed.
Yeah.
The feed.
Even the way the songs are being written, get that hook up front.
And get it out of the way and move on.
Right.
And yeah, to your point, records are just not, they're barely ever a thing from start to finish you're listening through as an experience.
I think with certain artists, you know,
you're right.
Taylor Swift is going to have people who are fervently, you know, and I guess for an artist, as an artist coming up, that's what you have to shoot for. You know, it's one of those things that, you know, back in the day when I played in the band, just to get a record deal, that would solve all the problems. No. No, that's just the beginning. You know,
it's a true story. Yeah.
It's like defeating not the first level boss in a video game. It's probably defeating like the fourth or fifth, and you still have another 60 levels to go. But looking at it from a business standpoint, you now understand, because you hear all these, you know, well, apparently all the things they gave us, we owed, you know, and if it didn't work out, we're actually contractually, they could come after us and get, you know, their investment back. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that's the thing, is that you're not looking at the contract and whatever. And typically most record companies would just write it off. But back then we used to think, you got a record contract? All your problems are solved.
Good to go.
Yeah, no, that's just the start of the real fight.
True story, man.
That's what John's going through now, your boss. And
yeah, no, I mean, being in a band, I think here in town, anybody who's like really taking it seriously, I think they're realizing when they're in it now that it takes so much to really make any kind of a dent in this. And you're just so grateful for the small things. I know over time it feels like you want the big thing. Our thing has always been, and we're in the stage where our band has been, 5 years touring, 6 years together, and we still are shooting for that. We know it's not going to solve our problems at all having a bus, right? Yeah. But we've been in that stage where we're so appreciative of just the smallest ups, where we'll go from like a 15 passenger to a bandwagon to like something else, and it means the world. It just does. It's like the gratefulness of the journey, right, to get there. It is what you almost like legitimately have to be in this industry, where it's like
but as a band member, understanding the cost justification aspect in a business environment, okay, where do we need to be in order to get the Prevo?
Sure.
Well, we know a Prevo is $500,000.
What does it take?
Right.
Sure.
Where, what's the, multiplier of that to make it cost justified?
Yeah.
And what are we doing in the small, mile markers as opposed to the 10 and 20 mile markers that adds up to that? And, a lot of it I used to think as you were talking, getting back to the Taylor Swift effect, what was her big advantage? I think it was her connection to her audience. It was her availability, her accessibility, taking the time. And granted, you can't, you get larger and larger, it gets more and more difficult. But she used social media to the point she was constantly communicating, getting back to people, making them feel acknowledged.
She has that edge for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that human and the acknowledgement from human beings is a big tool that I'm not sure a lot of B-list artists, I'm sure they understand it, but I don't think they understand what goes into it.
Oh, I'm sure.
You know what I mean? Because I mean, if I'm an artist dealing with I wouldn't want to do it. It's a freaking dirge.
It would be unbelievable.
Answering the same questions over and over.
For sure.
But you have to do it,
Yeah.
I met Jason Aldean several times. He's to the point where he remembers who I am at this point, but when I talked to him, he was picking out stuff about us and making, like he was a salesman, making a personal connection.
Yeah.
He met our kids backstage one day, and one of my kids was wearing a Chapman's Retreat elementary school T-shirt, which is where his kids went. He's like, and we were meeting him in North Carolina at the time, and he pointed, he's like, "Where are you guys from?" And he talked to us for about 5 or 10 minutes about the schools. He told us where he lived and all this other stuff, and I'm going,
yeah,
this dude's pretty cool, man.
A genius at that, man.
Yeah.
Just
that's what it takes. You know what I mean? That's that acknowledgement. And then even getting to the point where when acknowledgement is now expected.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I will say to John's benefit for sure, and this is not just saying as a friend, but as if you will, somebody who's kind of employed through his entity, he is really great about looking at the incremental progression of things and doing what you basically practically have said, which is, hey, if it does take, or what does it take? But if it does take this to get there, what are we doing right now to ensure that that's our path to that?
Right.
Always kind of like ensuring that there's gutters on where the ball's being placed, where it's like, hey, we can kind of shift this a little bit. But it's been cool over the years to watch, the small wins from just the mindset value of going, where do we need to be and how do we get there? And that's cool coming down from an artist. Yeah. And I feel like Jason's great about that too, where he's just gone, all right, guys, they're going to tell us we can't get there, but we're going to go this way. So,
well, I think a lot of new artists and a lot of people coming to town, they don't understand how long 5 years is.
Yeah, sure. And you know what? I think a lot of bands probably would go, oh, boo-hoo, 6 years. They're like 15-year bands, and they're going, and you know what? Kudos and props to them. Like, had an artist the other day. It was the coolest experience. I'll go ahead and say who it was, but you got to go watch the video. Those people who haven't seen it, was Drew Baldridge. got in a bus after 15 years just a week ago and couldn't be like someone more that you would want to like be in a bus situation. You're like, I just want good things for that dude. He just does a lot of good for people. But you're going, man, 15 years, you know, that's a long freaking time to tour when you know what grinding is.
Yeah.
To be in a bus and be that grateful is so cool to watch.
Yeah.
You know, of course you have the TikTok stuff that pops off and somebody's on a bus right away and you don't need to, you know, crap on that just as much as you don't need to crap on the 15 years. But it's like, that is really cool to see when it has been such a massive lift, if you will.
As you've gotten more wisdom in doing what you're doing, when something like that happens to, you know, that's a thing is that, but as quickly as you fire up, the descent is just as quick. So is it a flash in the pan? Is it rare air? Is it, you know, lightning in a bottle? All these different things to kind of consider.
Totally.
When you have people that get it all at once, it's almost, you got to feel badly for them because you're never going to know the satisfaction of what it takes most people to get to where you are.
Yeah. In any of these industries, right? In any entertainment part of what we do.
Right. Because it just happened for you.
Right. Right.
Based on how people responded to a viral video or whatever, you know, it's interesting to see where the next iteration of the rock star is going. You know,
I wonder that all the time, especially being such a big rock fan. Couldn't agree with you more.
Because, you know, did we live through the greatest period of music in the 70s, 80s, even early 90s?
I think so.
Is that it?
I know.
Is there stuff being written today? I always ask on Rich's show, what's being written today that's going to have the staying power of a Don't Stop Believin', of an Africa, of, you know, Time After Time, all these iconic standards that are multi-generational hits. What's out there today that's being written? You know, I would dare say Adele. I think Zach Brown Band's got a lot of long-staying stuff. Those are my two. Those are the only two people. Lady Gaga, I would say. I'm not sure what else.
Yeah, there's. I mean, you know, there are the less. And what's weird on that is that you do find those people, and you're like once in a minute, or bands, or lead singers, or something, and you're just like. I think for a long time, for a lot of people, it was even a band like the 1975. You're like, why aren't they bigger? Like for years, I think they were thinking that.
Right.
Where they were like, why aren't we doing more? Like these songs are incredible, or the band was incredible. And I think they, for so long, had such a tough spot where, I mean, you know, what a great example of being accepted somewhere else and then whatever it meant. But like Kings of Leon, right? Like they took them so long to be kind of accepted back home before Britain really took them and embraced them and everything else. And you look at those things now, those bands now, and you go, man, they probably should have been like, I don't even want to say like pat on the back sooner, but like just a acknowledgement of like, you were really writing some great stuff back then, or you were like, that album was killer back then and we really didn't recognize or whatever. So it's kind of weird to see that too, you know?
I wonder if they're cognizant, like when they're putting this stuff together, it may not be a hit immediately, but over time it's going to saturate and it's going to become part of a vernacular, if you will, because that does happen.
Totally.
You know, you go back and listen to Faith No More's stuff back in the 90s and stuff, or even late 80s, there's really good stuff they put out, you know, and it's just as a fan of theirs, you dive deeper on the stuff and stuff like that. But you go into a lot of these things that are happening today. I don't know. It's curious to see how it's going to play out.
That's a great question, and something I think about a lot too. Is just especially in these iconic, you know, bands or rock groups that shaped music, that were the tastemakers, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, you know, made it so where generationally you look at songs and go, that was what we got married to and we buried my friend to, and da-da-da-da. Like that was, you know, it was all over TV, but also was the song of our nation when our president died, or like things like that. And you go, well, where are those history songs now? Well, like what's being played when something tragic happens? What, you know, all those things. But yeah, I weirdly enough, go to sleep and wake up with those same thoughts with music, because I do have so much of music has shaped me that for my dad, my dad's generation. So I look at that now and go, what is that for my generation?
Yeah. You got to think that. So I hope that my gateway music, the stuff I listen to with my parents is now pretty much referred to, at least with my mom, referred to as yacht rock.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
you're like, what do you mean that's vintage? That's not right.
Yeah.
That
and
can't
it's like,
be right.
I remember hearing like Daryl Hall getting upset that some of their music is now being referred to as yacht rock. And he's like, I really despise that term and blah. I'm like, dude, what do you care? It's introducing a whole set of new people to your music.
That's right.
And your walks to the mailbox should be getting better.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay. And it's like, what are you complaining about?
It's funny.
It's making you relevant again.
Well, and again, generationally, people are adopting it all over again, to your point. It's like a 16-year-old kid's like, Hall & Oates rocks. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, Hall & Oates, so it's crazy.
Well, right on, man. Won't take up any more of your time. RobRicotta.com, I'm assuming is
Robert Ricotta. Yeah.
Robert Ricotta.
I'm a junior, so I use my dad's. RobertRicotta.com.
Everything to follow you is there.
Absolutely. And then obviously on social media, it's just easy. It's R Ricotta.
What do you, anything to promote you want to put out before we wrap up?
Man, we just, in music world, the main artist I play for, John Morgan, we just dropped an album that all our guys played on. It was a really kind of beautiful representation of what we got to do in the studio together.
And collabed with Aldine.
Yep.
That's
collabed
cool.
with Aldine. And then a lot of the songs, the whole album's called Carolina Blue. Mm-hmm. And so kind of an ode to North Carolina where we grew up. And all the songs, I am very grateful to say that John has written a record that from start to finish is an album that you put on and you follow along, and it is start to finish a freaking great record. Even if I wasn't a part of it, it's tremendous songs, great writers on there, great players on there, and great producer. Brenna Anderson produced it. Another, let's see, voiceover world and stuff like that. I'll keep it under wraps for now, Jim, until to be continued. Yeah. Some good things.
Yeah.
Maybe some representation wise I'm working on at the moment. That would be fun to share with you if and when it happens.
Well, you let me know.
Yeah, I shall.
Yeah. And let them know if they need like a raspy voice that, conveys age and wisdom.
Absolutely. And thank you, by the way. I know we hit it off on Rich's podcast. And when you called me for this, I was like, I'm really, really honored to be on here with you.
Well, thank you.
Two, it's really, really fun to be around someone too who hones this craft like I do. And that just means the world to be around somebody that I can learn from as well. So
I appreciate that.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate that. Well, there you go. Everything will be in the description at the Mostly Middle Tennessee Business Podcast. The website is mmtbp.com. If you like what you heard today, share it. Let people know about it. Give us a review and a rating on the platform on which you're receiving all this amazing information. And if you want to be a part of the podcast, there is a link on the website to submit a form, and we'll take a look at it and see if we can make something happen. mmtbp.com. Mr. Rob, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.